All clear. Keep watching, or I'll get coffee.
It's a beautiful day. It's an early morning. It's a Sunday. Most people, either military or civilian, are still in bed. And it seems like another placid day in Hawaii in the Pacific.
The United States does have many indications that something is going to happen. They've broken the Japanese codes.
They know that the Japanese ambassadors are going to come to Washington at a very specific time on December 7th to present their rejection of FDR's final proposal.
And therefore, we should be on alert because something's going to happen. But the Japanese start planning the attack on Pearl Harbor long before the breakdown in relations. They're going to keep radio silent, 6 aircraft carriers, 33 ships, 414 aircraft. They're going to cover 3,500 miles worth of northern Pacific Ocean and arrive about 200 miles off the northern part of Hawaii on the morning of December 7th. 6 o'clock in the morning, they're going to launch 189 planes in a first wave.
Pearl Harbor, at this point, houses the great majority of the Pacific Fleet. Its majority of its destroyers, its battleships.
Jeez. Did you guys hear that?
FDR is sitting in his study with his stamps. He's there with his close advisor, Harry Hopkins, who lives in the White House.
Yes. Knox, what is it? No. They've attacked Pearl Harbor.
That can't be right. Must be a mistake. The Japanese do not have the guts.
But they have. While their so-called diplomats are sitting with our Secretary of State. Get everybody in here.
The Japanese see that the harbor is filled with sitting ducks, these great vessels filled with crew members, filled with ammunition, and they're all tied up and they're all right next to each other. So it's like shooting fish in a barrel.
They're attacking with a second wave right now.
How many? It's Battleship Row. They hit them all. 8 sunk or incapacitated. The Arizona lost with all hands.
Why, in God's name, were they all tied up at dock?
Given how surprised they were and how ill-prepared they were, the Americans really put up a pretty brave fight. The one great failure of Japanese intelligence is that they don't know the aircraft carriers aren't there. So the 3 American carriers end up escaping this attack. But it's too little too late.
18 ships are sunk or heavily damaged. 2,402 military personnel are killed. Another 1,247 are wounded. Nearly 60 civilians are killed.
They take out hundreds of American aircraft, and they destroyed critical airfields and wharves.
The shock was then amplified by the series of attacks. Pearl Harbor was just one of more than 10 invasions and attacks that happened all across the Pacific. including Singapore and Malay and eventually the Philippines. The Japanese seemed unstoppable. This is the worst day in FDR's life. He was so committed to the U.S. Navy. When he was Assistant Secretary of the Navy, he was actually at the keel-laying ceremony for the USS Arizona, and now it lay at the bottom of Pearl Harbor.
After Pearl Harbor, everyone who was in the White House on that day said FDR exhibited a deadly calm. While aides are running in and out with one report worse than the next report, in a panic, he just remained calm. Eleanor said that at times of great crisis, he could actually be an iceberg. But that anger and those feelings were inside.
Maybe 2,000 of our boys dead. More than 100 planes lost. God knows how many ships.
You cannot blame yourself.
It was on my watch.
Hello? Prime Minister Churchill.
Winston.
Mr. President, what's this about Japan?
They've attacked us at Pearl Harbor. We're all in the same boat now.
Well, this simplifies things.
It certainly does.
Sunday, December 7th, 1941. Late in the afternoon, he lights a cigarette, calls Grace Tully, his secretary, and dictates the great speech with punctuation. Yesterday, comma, December 7th, 1941, comma, a date which will live in world history, was the first line.
And he makes one of the most extraordinary edits, and he crosses out world history.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan.
When he goes to the joint session of Congress, that anger and fury are underneath the resolve and determination, and it was just exactly what people needed to hear. This is treachery. This will not stand.
I ask that the Congress declare that since the unprovoked and dastardly attack by Japan, a state of war has existed between the United States and the Japanese Empire.
Most people are completely shocked by crisis, either economic crisis or war. FDR was not shocked. He'd been through the crisis of his own loss of his limbs. Most people think they don't have the confidence to deal with these terrible things. FDR had a lot of confidence.
The average American went to bed on December 6th lukewarm about the prospect of going to war. By the afternoon of December 7th, many of them believe what Admiral Nimitz says as he steams back into Pearl Harbor. When we're done with those people, the only place that they will speak the Japanese language is in hell. And effectively, what they do is they wake a sleeping giant. December 8th, we declare war on Japan. Ironically, on the 11th of December, Germany declares war on the United States.
And then finally, we can declare war on them. That was the war he knew he needed to happen.
Roosevelt can take off the gloves, and he can lead Americans openly and honestly into war against fascism, which was the greatest threat democracy had ever faced.
To say that there's a lot riding on D-Day, Operation Overlord, is a massive understatement. Operation Overlord is the culmination of years of effort by Franklin Roosevelt to convince Americans that they needed to be prepared for the war. And then once we entered the war, taking an army of just a couple 100,000 and building it up, putting people into uniform by the millions. Just the logistics of that alone is pretty staggering. And training all those folks and outfitting all those folks. It is the largest military operation ever undertaken in history. It involves so many people, so many layers of military apparatus, from transports and tanks, ammunition, soldiers and sailors, communication devices, aircraft, tremendous amount of coordination.
It's an extraordinarily difficult operation.
The Atlantic Wall is a system of defense that the Germans start to create from the moment they take Europe. This is what the Allies have to break in order to get into Europe. It's basically a 1,700-mile wall that starts in Norway, goes all the way to the Spanish coast. If you think about the Atlantic Wall as these 15,000 bunkers as being the skeleton, the trenches that connect them would be the sinew that connects those bones. The cannons would be the muscles that make it all work. In front of that would be 6,000 mines, the obstacles on the beaches, the obstacles in the field to keep gliders from landing. That would be the armor or the skin. And then ultimately, the soldiers that defend it would be the blood that pumped through it.
In the build-up to what becomes Operation Overlord, the D-Day invasion, the Allies create all kinds of diversions, all kinds of fake radio traffic, even using fake tanks and things like that to create the illusion that this may be a three-pronged or a two-pronged operation, all to get the Germans to not mass their forces, and what ultimately becomes the main point of contact at Normandy.
We need waves that are less than 5 feet. We're going to land at dawn. We'd like to have a half a moon. We'd like to have 2,500 feet of cloud ceiling. We'd like to have at least 50% visibility. How do we get those conditions to happen?
On the eve of D-Day, this is the culmination of years of preparation, years of building the supplies, years of coalition building. Now there's nothing more that FDR can do. He had to believe that he had supplied the soldiers the best they could, that they were trained and they were ready for this, and there was nothing he could do but depend upon those soldiers.
Across June 6th, we're going to put 155,000 soldiers on the beach on one day. You got 7,000 ships, 13,000 aircraft, all in support of this. It's the greatest joint Army, Air Force, Navy, coalition, multi-service, military operation in the history of Earth. If you were in the first wave at D-Day, you would have left your port early in the morning of June 6th. You would have made your way across rough seas. You were probably seasick. They tried to give you some breakfast. You took it, and now you've thrown that up. All the toilets are full. All the rails are full. You've now gotten on a landing craft, climbed down a slippery rope to get in that landing craft. You would have been splashed by sea waves, soaking wet, carrying 60 pounds of gear. You can hear the aircraft go overhead. You hope they're doing their part. And in front of you, you would see German defenses, mines and barbed wire, artillery and mortars and machine guns. Then all of a sudden, the boat would hit the beach, and then they would drop the ramp.
FDR had made the decisions he could make and was now at the mercy of events, of time and tide, quite literally.
Come in.
From General Eisenhower, Mr. President.
Ten seconds, Mr. President. And 5, 4.
My fellow Americans, in this poignant hour, I ask you to join me in prayer. Almighty God, our sons, pride of our nation, this day have set upon a mighty endeavor, a struggle to preserve our republic, our religion, and our civilization, and to set free a suffering humanity. They will need thy blessings. Their road will be long and hard, for the enemy is strong. Success may not come with rushing speed, but we shall return again and again. By the righteousness of our cause, our sons will triumph. We shall prevail over the unholy forces of our enemy. Help us to conquer the apostles of greed and racial arrogances. Lead us to the saving of our country, and with our sister nations, into a world unity that will spell a sure peace, and a peace that will let all of men live in freedom. Thy will be done, Almighty God. Amen.
That speech was arguably the largest mass prayer in human history. 100 million Americans listened.
Church bells rang, and everybody went to churches and synagogues. The impulse to pray was overwhelming.
By noon on June 6, 1944, even defenses around Omaha Beach, bloody Omaha Beach, will start to break. And now what we have is the invasion is a success. Franklin Delano Roosevelt's prayer speaks volumes. He's responsible for speaking for all freedom-loving people. What Operation Overlord stands for, it's hope. Liberty's not just this ethereal idea. Liberty is coming.
It's January 1945, and it looks like finally, after a half-decade of war, the war in Europe will finally come to a close sometime in the late spring or early summer. And with this brings pressing questions that Churchill, Roosevelt, and Stalin have to address, and they're questions that they feel they can only address in person. So they decide that they're going to have a conference together at the Lavadia Palace on the Black Sea, the farthest west that Stalin will go.
Yalta on the Black Sea was the scene of a Big Three meeting. Here starts a series of talks that will profoundly influence the diplomatic and political future of the world.
February 1945, they're starting to plan the post-war world. And you have three people that see the world very differently.
The Big Three arrive at Yalta with distinct goals. Roosevelt wants to bring the Soviet Union into the war against the Japanese. But Roosevelt also has a personal goal that's looking even farther into the future. After the war's over, he wants to create a new organization for international peace, the United Nations.
FDR believes the United Nations will help the world resolve its problems, will help de-escalate militarism, and make the world a safer place into the future.
For Churchill and Stalin, their objectives from Yalta are really centered around Poland. Britain went to war in defense of Polish sovereignty in 1939, and the Polish government has been in exile in London ever since. Churchill wants to make sure that when all of this is over, that Poland is free, that they are independent and have self-determination. Stalin wants to make sure that they are going to have a government in Poland that's controlled by Stalin.
FDR never thought that Soviets and Americans ultimately had the same political ideals. But as a tough political leader, Roosevelt knew at the beginning of 1945, the only way to finish off this war is to keep the Soviets fighting, and that may mean allowing Stalin to do a lot of things that Roosevelt would have preferred that he not do.
Каждый раз, когда немцы вторглись в мою страну, они сделали это через Польшу. Так что Польша должна иметь правительство, которое дружественное с Советским Союзом. Я уверен, что вы понимаете, что для нас это обсуждение не подлежит.
Of course, we want Poland's government to be friendly. But, most importantly, it must be decided by the Polish people.
Which means, Marshal Stalin, the members of the Polish administration who've been taking refuge in my country should be included in the government. But you have shut them out and put your own people in.
А что думает о этом президент Рузвельт?
I'm assuming that you will honor our previous agreement that Poland will enjoy free elections under American and British supervision.
В Польше более миллиона советских войсков. Сколько американцев? Мы те, кто пожертвовали так много, чтобы освободить Европу от нацистов. Итак, мы будем теми, кто обеспечит их демократию.
Then swear to me that you will guarantee free elections in Poland.
Я обещаю. Надеюсь, моего слова будет достаточно.
I will need your word on something else, too. I want you to join the war against Japan.
The legacy of Yalta was complicated when they depart. They have reached agreements that are going to lead to peace, to a better world. And yet Churchill is deeply concerned that Stalin has no intention of honoring his agreements, especially when it comes to guaranteeing free elections in Poland. Roosevelt does succeed in drawing the Soviet Union into his plan for the United Nations. He also walks away with a commitment from Stalin to join the fight in the Pacific.
We now look back on the Yalta Conference, 1945, and many people would say, why did Roosevelt give up Eastern Europe? Was it because he was old and sick? No, it was because the Soviet army owned an awful lot of Europe, and no matter how charming or how angry Roosevelt got at this conference, his personal skill was not enough to overcome that.
Roosevelt believed that he was going to keep going back to Stalin to negotiate issue by issue as things unfolded. He didn't see Yalta as this climactic act. It was not supposed to be the final word.
Mrs. Roosevelt,
Yes.
I'm sorry, but you're needed at the White House right away.
Right away.
Eleanor gave her talk, and she said she knew that something dreadful had happened.
As his cousin Daisy Sulkley said, Franklin Roosevelt, the hope of the world, has died.
Eleanor summoned Vice President Truman to the White House, and she puts her hand on his shoulder, and she says, "Harry, the president is dead." And Truman says, "Oh, Mrs. Roosevelt, I'm so sorry. You know, what can I do for you?" And she says, "That's the wrong question, because you're the one that's in trouble now."
From his beloved second home at Warm Springs, Georgia, the body of Franklin Delano Roosevelt moves on the first stages of its journey to his final resting place.
There's immense public grieving. There's this sense that the glue that had held the country together had cracked. That someone who had seemed perennial was actually temporal. And the New York Times that day wrote, "Men will thank God on their knees 1,000 years from now that Franklin Roosevelt was in the White House when he was." There was a daily government list of casualties that went out. And the top casualty that day was Roosevelt Franklin Delano, Commander-in-Chief.
There was a sense of his being the only president for lots of people that they'd ever known. 12 years is a long time. Having carried them through the Depression, carried them through the war, feeling a sense of connection to him. The kids who went to the civilian conservation camps become the soldiers in World War II. There's this story of somebody who's crying during the funeral, and they say to him, an old man, he's crying, "Did you know President Roosevelt?" He said, "No, but he knew me."
Franklin Roosevelt rescued democracy and capitalism in their hours of maximum danger. And the fact that we have a market economy and a republic, if we can keep it, is in no small measure because of his fundamental belief in the constitutional order.
Ambition is the most mysterious part of leadership. FDR had this ambition that's large, but it's for something larger than himself.
FDR had this great gift for understanding what the American people needed.
FDR made us better than we are. He could call on our better angels.
I pledge myself to a new deal for the American people.
There was something about that voice, there was something about that smile that suggested it's gonna be okay.
Roosevelt opened the eyes of Americans to positive effects that government could have on individual lives.
Everybody talks at the end about how he'll be remembered for having gotten us through the Depression, carrying us through World War II, and there's Social Security and all these things you can see in the history books. He would say, it's the bond with the people that I've established and that I care for. Underneath all those laws are people, and there are people whose lives he's affected and people who he helped to get them back on their feet in the 30s, to be ready to be the greatest generation in the 40s. And I think that's what he'd want to be remembered for.
Americans have always been lucky. We got Lincoln when we needed him, we had Washington when we needed him, and we had FDR when we needed him.
Let me assert my firm belief that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.